the criminals coming from Europe, arriving on the island of Haiti. That's the name of the entire island. That's what the Arawak people called it. And this for thousands of years before the criminals arrived from Europe. And when they arrive, they find the people there. It is estimated there were between 2 and 3.5 million Arawaks on the island in 1492. 11 years later, it was estimated less than 100,000 people were living on this island. A little before this estimate, as they noticed that the people were just dropping off like flies, the Europeans went to Jamaica, collected a portion of the population there, brought them to Haiti to dig for gold for them. And that population disappeared too. They went to Puerto Rico and brought boatloads of Arawak and Tainos and Caribs. And that population disappeared too in Haiti. We are told this whole process is supposed to be a civilizing process. We are told the Arawaks were savages. We are told, in some cases they even say they were, what's the word they like to say when you eat people? No, cannibals. Cannibals. They were cannibals. But you know, these Arawaks were living there for thousands of years and multiplying. 3.5 million people eliminated in less than 11 years. A few Europeans came. The Europeans were never more than a few thousand on the island. If we had 3.5 million cannibals on an island, and a few thousand Europeans came, and after 11 years, the cannibals were all dead, and the civilizers were still there. Is there something wrong with this information? Something very wrong. Very, very wrong there.
Certain countries have come to Africa for centuries to rob Africa of its resources. They should be admitting what they've done. Some are rich because of the resources they took from Africa. They never thought of helping Africa to develop. They subjugated Africa. They took the political power, economic power, and then made us, therefore, socially, to have no power at all. We had to fight to liberate ourselves. They were never here to help. They were here to rob. After decolonization, they continued to do so. They could no longer use political power. They influenced it indirectly, but they held on to the economic levers of these countries. They were dominating, they were benefiting, they were doing nothing to help us. They created banks that were instruments of subjugating us.
What's up, guys? Welcome back to my YouTube channel once again. My name is Dash Lifestyle. Kindly for watching me for the first time, remember to subscribe, like, share, and also comment. So guys, in today's video, I want us to watch this video and see how the Western countries, they are destabilizing black countries in Caribbean and also African country. So kindly guys, watch this video till the end, then I'll be back with more comment.
But no one is interested in Africa developing too much. Because if it develops tomorrow, let's imagine Africa develops its industry like South Korea did, a country that was as poor as Mozambique 6 years ago. If tomorrow it starts making cars, if tomorrow it starts refining its oil, if tomorrow it starts doing agriculture and transforming its agricultural products, it will no longer buy our imports. And so we are not interested in that situation. We are not interested. So the will of the rich countries. We're talking about geopolitics today. Everywhere we see, there is clearly no interest in these countries developing. these less developed countries.
Dans la tête des gens que
There was this idea, actually in people's minds, that you develop a country with entrepreneurs. It's an important part, but it's not the main part. An industry is needed, a heavy industry. These countries export oil, export cocoa, export raw materials, but these raw materials they export are often processed in other countries. And processing is what creates jobs.
quand vous avez une compagnie étrangère qui s'installe, je prends toujours l'exemple moi du Congo Brazzaville que je connais bien.
When you have a foreign company setting up, I always take the example of Congo-Brazzaville, which I know well. Congo-Brazzaville, over 90%, only exports oil. This oil is produced by whom? Exploited by whom? By mostly private companies. 60% total, 30% ENI. The Italian, 90% of the company. Then you have a few companies here and there, private ones.
L'ensemble de son pétrole. Elle récupère une partie de l'argent, mais elle est incapable de l'exploiter.
The public Congolese oil company is unable to do drilling. It is unable to exploit all of its oil. It collects part of the money, but it is unable to exploit it. So all the knowledge on production, on reserves, all the quantities, production volumes are decided by the private company, which does not depend on the country. So that's the first thing. There is a real asymmetry of information between the state and the company. The prices of their goods, 90% of exports, therefore oil, the price is not determined by Congo. It is determined by the financial markets. So, when there are tense geopolitical situations like now, prices go up, it benefits them.
Et l'État congolais rachète de l'essence à ces pays-là. Donc la réalité, c'est qu'il faudrait qu'il y ait une industrie qui puisse transformer.
When the price is zero, as in the COVID period, nothing comes in. Nothing comes in. So we can see that there is a very strong dependence. And then this product is exported, processed in France or elsewhere. And the Congolese state buys gasoline back from these countries. So the reality is that there should be an industry that could transform this production on the spot. And it is this one that would create jobs, refineries, distribution, etc. But to have that, what is needed? Funding is needed to finance heavy industry. It's not with €1 of microcredit that you're going to finance heavy industry. And this funding, if the banks don't want to lend it, who will lend it? It's China, but China is a country. It will lend it under certain conditions. Conditions sometimes on access to raw materials or more advantageous sharing of production for them, and so it does not allow them to be completely independent. And it must be kept in mind that rich countries have developed in a world where they created conditions that were favorable to them. The WTO, the World Trade Organization, is an organization that has favored rich countries much more than poor countries.
Pas à lever de l'argent.
Quels seraient les...
Ce que je veux ajouter, excuse-moi, je te coupe.
The financial system, with mostly European and American banks, the rich countries. And so rich countries raise huge funds to carry out their projects, while poor countries to carry out projects we know. That is to say, to do things we know, refineries, food, agricultural industries. We know how to do that. Well, they can't raise money. What I want to add, excuse me, I interrupt you. What I want to add is that we have often said in recent years that poor countries were not developing because of corruption. We had to find a reason. It's corruption, the informal economy. These people are corrupt. There is an informal economy. They do not respect the rules. They are corrupt. Some even went further by saying that they are a bit lazy. It has always been a bit like that. And we found the same kind of debate when there was the sovereign debt crisis in Europe, where we called the southern countries pig. They were called Portugal, Italy, Greece, and Spain. They were called the pig. They were said to be lazy, that they were in the informal, that they were not like the Germans and the French. This debate already existed with African countries. They don't work, they are lazy. They don't have good training, they are corrupt. Very well, that's what we said. If tomorrow I were given the reins of Congo-Brazzaville, and I was told what the formula is in the current conditions to get it out of underdevelopment and make the economy take off, it would be extremely complicated. And I would tell you that I don't have the solution. Because it's a country, in fact, that does not have control over development at all. Because it does not have access to financing, as I said. Because it does not control the main good it produces. Because it does not control the volume and the price. And so developing a country under these conditions is extremely difficult. So corruption is actually a collateral effect. The real problem is the World Trade Organization and the financial system as it was created. Would you say that there has been a stranglehold by the northern countries? I'll explain, for example. We are looking for what the exit routes are, and especially by whom. Because you may have the preconceived idea of, yes, the northern countries are going to help the southern countries again. But in fact, it is because there is a stranglehold and also an enrichment of the northern countries thanks to and by the southern countries. For example, Zambia just had extra time to pay back, but the debt was not written off or reduced, etc. There are also negotiations on the next contributions of rich countries for the upcoming 3-year period, which will soon begin and should end in December 2024. There are also many solutions put forward by the IMF, which are considered as not enough actually. Which way now do you think should be oriented towards? So it is exactly what you said. That is to say that in reality, Africa buys a lot of imports from Europe, and also mainly from France. And we buy a lot of things we need and don't produce, including oil and raw materials. So Western countries are not interested in Africa falling. Because if it goes very badly, if there is not a situation at least stable, what happens? We risk having fewer raw materials that we need, and in exchange, we risk selling them fewer things. So we have to maintain Africa in an intermediate situation, so that it is rich enough to buy our goods and stable enough for us to buy the goods we need, those we really need, energy and raw materials. But no one is interested in Africa developing too much. Because if it develops tomorrow, let's imagine Africa develops its industry like South Korea did, a country that was as poor as Mozambique 6 years ago. If tomorrow it starts making cars, if tomorrow it starts refining its oil, if tomorrow it starts doing agriculture and transforming its agricultural products, it will no longer buy our imports. And so we are not interested in that situation. We are not interested. So the will of the rich countries. We are doing geopolitics today. Everywhere, we can clearly see that there is no interest in these countries developing, these LDCs. Now, if I were in the place of Africans, it is very difficult. That is to say, for me, the first thing I would do is I would be much more aggressive in negotiation. Because if you don't have financing, then you can hold grand speeches. It's always nice. But once you get to the concrete, what is Africa today concretely? As it does not have access to financing, as it does not control the goods it produces, in volumes as in prices, it is trying today, for there to be activity, to attract as much foreign direct investment as possible, by creating free zones where very little tax is paid, saying that this is the only way we have to restart the economy, which does not allow it either to develop its industry, because the industry that would come is much more powerful and much more established than the one that would develop and would be a nascent industry. So the first thing I would do in this situation, which is an extremely complicated situation, I would seek to be much more aggressive in the production shares. That is to say, when a foreign company comes, you have to impose things on it. The Gulf countries, Qatar, the Emirates at their time, when you came to settle with them for anything, you had to give a big part, more than 50%, to a local native, a local resident of the investment. It was mandatory. The WTO did everything to knock this out, but some countries held firm, except when they really needed it. They make exceptions at the Ministry of Economy, but when they estimate that the person has to give a part, he gives a part to the natives, which trains them. You see, for example, this type of measure could be applied by some African countries. If they applied it, of course, as a whole, it would be better.
System. It's based on large multinational companies. It's based on private profits. It's based on a very, very low measure of international transfers to help poor people, sometimes none at all. It's based on extreme irresponsibility of powerful countries with regard to the environment. And it's based on a radical denial of rights of poor people, as we just heard. It's interesting, we heard from the Minister of DRC, what's wrong with your country? Well, we don't even start by saying the King of Belgium created a slave colony for 30 years. The government of Belgium ran the slave colony for another 40 years. The CIA assassinated your first popular leader, Mr. Lumumba, and then installed another dictatorship for the next 30 years. And then Glencore and others now suck out your cobalt without giving you tax income. We don't reflect on that. We say, what's wrong with you? Why don't you govern properly? And so we have a system, but we need a different system. We cannot turn this over to the private sector. We already did about 100 years ago. Not only to the private sector with the U.S. military behind it, with the defense of these property rights in the Minister of Honduras's country, where United Fruit ran the country for a long time. And their attorney was the foreign minister of the United States, Secretary Dulles, and his brother was the head of the CIA and overthrew the next door neighbor, Mr. Arbenz, to make sure that United Fruit could have its property. So we have a system, but we need a different system. And the different system has to be based on principles of human dignity in the Universal Declaration, principles of sovereignty, principles of economic rights, because these are not nice things to do. In 1948, all the government said that food is a right, social protection is a right, not a nice thing, not a pleasant thing, a right. That was 73 years ago. The SDGs are nothing more than our generation's attempt to honor the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. I come from a country that not only doesn't care about the world's poor, it doesn't even care about its own poor. 1 in 7 Americans is hungry right now. And they don't care. I mean, the poor people care, but one political party, all it cares about is cutting taxes for the rich and filibustering any solution. So we're in a world that's really tough. The private sector's not going to solve this problem. I'm sorry to say to all of the private sector leaders, behave, pay your taxes, follow the rules. That's what you should do. And what the governments should do is the following. They won't, but they should. First, the G20 should become the G21 by inviting systemically the chairperson of the African Union and the African Union to be the 21st country. The European Union is a member of the G20 as the EU. If you add the AU as the 21st for the G21, you add 1.4 billion people to representation at that crucial event. That will change decisively the discussion, because 1.4 billion people are not at the table for finance right now, and they need to be. So my first recommendation is the G21. I love the G20. Add one seat, 1.4 billion people with the AU represented. Second, we need an order of magnitude change of development finance. The rich countries just borrowed $17 trillion for COVID. The poor countries, nothing. Because the rich countries can borrow at 0, and the poor countries pay 5 or 10% coupon rates or have no access at all. So the world exposed its grotesque inequality this past year and a half. Rich countries didn't say, we tighten our belts, why don't you? My country spent $7 trillion of emergency funding, not one penny for anybody else, by the way. $7 trillion, it didn't even cross the imagination of the US Congress to include a few crumbs for the rest of the world. But the poor countries cannot borrow. That's what we should have heard from the World Bank. I didn't hear that from the World Bank. I didn't hear real numbers. Real numbers are in trillions right now because the world economy is 100 trillion a year. But we don't talk about real numbers. But my job, all I know in this world is long division. Divide by 100 trillion and then see whether you're talking about something real or not. So that's the second thing. We need massively to increase the lending and borrowing capacity of poor countries at near 0 interest rates like the rich countries have. Then they could get something done. By the way, for COVID vaccines, what we really need is for the United States to sit down with China, with Russia, with the European Union and the UK one day around the table and allocate these vaccines rather than hoarding them. That's all it would take. And then we're going to have national pathways. This is a wonderful idea, but they're going to need financing. And so everything that I've been saying, I know the numbers. That's all I do for 40 years is add up what's missing. You want electricity? It has to be purchased. You want digital access? It has to be purchased. You want safe water irrigation? It has to be purchased. This is what I do for a living, is add up these numbers and then find out that then somebody makes up something and names 1/100th of what's really needed. It's not even hard. By the way, the IMF has done wonderful studies in the last 2 years showing that we have a financing gap of about $400 to $500 billion a year for the basics for the SDGs. They show the gap, but nobody comes up with the number, the solution, which wouldn't be so hard because that's just not a big number. It's 0.5 of 1% of world output. So if we really care, we wouldn't have the G7 saying, we love education, therefore we're going to give $3 billion for education. That's what they said at the summit. But what UNESCO has shown is that you need at least $30 billion a year, minimum. But nobody looks at numbers. They just make up nice check the box. So we need the real numbers of finance to back the national pathways. The final thing is we need the UN as the core and central institution of this world, period. Because this is the only way we're going to have a civilized world, is a strong UN. And it cannot be that the whole UN budget is less than my neighborhood's budget in New York. The UN core budget this year is $3 billion. New York City's budget is $100 billion. And then we say, why don't things work well? Because the rich are hoarding everything. Final point, rather than our 3 billionaires going in space, well, they could go into space and stay there and leave their money behind. That would be one idea. But another idea is we have 2,775 billionaires on the current list. Their combined net worth, 2,700, is $13.1 trillion. Now, I have it on good authority, you don't need more than $1 billion to be comfortable. But they have an excess of $11 trillion over just the $1 billion. So we should be taxing that and having a civilized world.
So guys, I hope you have watched and listened to that video from the Western leaders, how they are coming out and destabilizing the black countries in the Caribbean and also African country. For a very long time, I've been telling you that it is now the right time for the Western country to stop taking our resources from our black countries. This Western country, they need to stop exploiting our black countries. Look what they are doing to the black countries in the Caribbean. Look what they are doing to Haiti. Look what they are doing to Jamaica. There is so much black countries in the Caribbean that it is still suffering because of the hands of the colonizers, because of the hands of the Western still being in their country. Look what these people they are doing to our black country, to our African country. Even today, these people, they are still exploiting our African country, and yet they are the ones who they are calling our African country a poorest country on earth, the country which it is a third world country, the country which people they are dying, the children they are suffering in our third world country, and all these things that it is happening to our Africa, it is because of the Western country. So this is how these people they have been destabilizing. They don't want our country to grow. For a very long time, these people they have been destabilizing by not making Africa to be in peace. These people they don't want to see Africa becoming in peace. That's why they're always fighting. They always try to make us black people to fight each other. You can see these people they want us African country to fight each other, because they know that if we will have a peace, if we'll be speaking one language as Africa, the Western people, they will not have anything, they will not benefit from our country. So for them to benefit to our country, they need to make us not they need to make our countries, our black countries, not to support each other, not to have peace. And that's why up to date, they are still showing bad image of Africa to our brothers and sisters who they are in diaspora. Yeah, they are telling them that Africa, it is bad. Africa, people that are dying with the poor, there is less opportunity in Africa. Africa, it is not safe for the human being. This is how they are telling our black people who they are in their country, so that these people, they cannot come here at home. That's why these people, they can't support and love their fellow black people who they are in Africa or in the black countries in the Caribbean. So these people, they want to spoil us black people mind by showing bad image to our brothers and sisters who they are in the diaspora. And because of that, we are seeing our brothers and sisters, they don't want even to come and support our black countries. So it benefits them by seeing us black people not uniting, by making our leaders to be their puppet. They are making our leaders to be puppet for a very long time. And yet they are saying that the people who are making our country to become a poor country, it is our leaders, because our leaders, they are the ones who are selling out our resources to them. But these people, they are the ones who are making our leaders to become puppet. It is not our leaders who they are selling out their country. It is them, they are forcing our leaders to become puppets so that they can benefit from the minerals and the things that we are having here in our black country. So right now, it is time for revolution. What these people that have been doing to our African countries, to our black countries, it is now coming out. It is now coming out and showcasing to the world. These people, they have been doing a lot of things to us black people. They've been gone to an extent of hiding our history. These people that have came out and teach our children about their white history. They don't want us black people to know our history. They don't want us black people to teach our children in school about the black history, because these people, they fear us black people to know the truth, to know exactly who black people we are. Because when we black people will start learning our history, when we black people will start to know exactly who we are and how these people, they have been taking us they have been taking our resources here in Africa, we black people, we will resilience to these Western people. So right now, I want to tell you that we black people, we need to wake up. We need to come together. We need to unite so that these Western countries, they need to respect us black people. They need to stop destabilizing our country. They need to stop taking resources from our African and black countries in the Caribbean. So it is now the time for us black people to wake up and to develop our country. These people, you can see in the interviews, they are saying that they are not the ones who are making Africa to be poor. It is us Africa who are making our country to be poor. It is our leaders that are making our country to be poor. And also some of them, they're coming exposing each other. Because there is a meeting that these people, they sit down in Berlin and when these people, they sit on this meeting, they were discussing on how they are going to share Africa. And that's why you see some of the Western countries, they came and colonized Africa in the different country. This is how these people, they shared Africa. These people, it is how these people, they have been taking minerals and resources from Africa. They are building their country with our resources, with our minerals from here in Africa, and yet they are calling Africa poorest country. If it wasn't Africa, there wouldn't be America that you see right now. If it wasn't for Africa, you couldn't see Europe, these countries in the Europe developing. These countries, they have been destabilizing, they have been taking resources from Africa. You can imagine with all the resources that these people, they have been taking from here in Africa. If they won't take these resources, Africa will be the fastest and the growing country. It will be the first world country. Yeah, because there is no country in the world that it is blessed than Africa, because Africa, we have all resources. These people, they don't have resources. If we Africa will stop our resources from going to these Western countries, this Western country, it will fall down immediately. Yeah, the Western country, it is going to fall down immediately. If our leaders, they will wake up and stop resources going out of our country, Africa will be more superpower country. So kindly guys, I don't want to talk too much. Subscribe if you haven't, like this video, share, and also comment. See you on my next one. Bye bye guys.